having a conversation it has never had to have quite like this before, and the USGA is sitting in the middle of it, saying nothing. What happened at Shinnecock Hills last week didn't just shock the fans watching at home. It sent a ripple straight into the locker rooms across the tour, and the effects of that ripple are being felt right now at the Travelers Championship. In the names that are missing from the field, in the silence from the players who showed up, and in a question nobody at the USGA seems willing to answer publicly. Two separate things happened at this year's US Open. One player got hit with a penalty so unusual that it made headlines around the world. Another player walked away from a moment that had social media screaming about cheating, and the USGA let it go completely. Those two things, sitting side by side, are the reason the Travelers field looks the way it does this week, and the reason players inside the tour are furious in a way you are not seeing on any official broadcast. If you think the USGA owe this tour a straight answer right now, drop your opinion in the comments. I want to know where you stand on this. And subscribe, because the story we are about to get into is the one golf's official channels are not touching. What exactly happened? Who is affected? And which stars decided the Travelers wasn't worth their time this week? That is what this video is going to give you, in full, before it ends. But to understand why players are this angry, you have to go back to the beginning of the week at Shinnecock Hills. Not to Sunday, not to the final round, to Thursday evening on a hole that most people in that field will not forget for a long time. The sixth hole at Shinnecock is a par 4 that was already making players miserable before anything dramatic happened. The wind was up, the rough was brutal, and the scoring average on that hole across the field was among the worst on the course all week. For one player in particular, that hole became something close to a personal disaster, and what happened in the middle of it is the spark that lit everything you are watching unfold right now. Joaquin Niemann stepped onto the sixth tee and hit 2 consecutive drives out of bounds to the right, 2 bad swings in a row, on a hole already playing at a difficulty level that was punishing even clean strikes. By the time his ball finally found the fescue, the frustration inside him had been building for several minutes. He asked a referee nearby whether he could get free relief from fire ants he spotted close to his ball. The referee said no. The horn sounded to suspend play for darkness. And in that moment, standing in the rough at the end of a round that had already gone badly wrong, Niemann threw his club, not a few feet. Not a frustrated flick toward the bag. He launched it roughly 50 yards down the hole, far enough that a police officer standing nearby had to walk over and retrieve it for him. A volunteer named Tristan Chang witnessed the whole sequence. The kicked flag, the frustrated stomping around in the sand, and the throw itself. Chang later told reporters it was, in his words, a pretty impressive throw. Niemann finished the hole with a 9, signed his scorecard, and walked off the course when play was suspended. He had no idea what was coming the next morning. What the USGA did next had never happened before in a major championship, and it set off a chain reaction that nobody in the Travelers field has stopped thinking about since. When Niemann came back Friday morning to complete his first round, a USGA official approached him after he signed his card. He was told that his behavior on the 6th hole the previous evening had been reviewed. The result of that review was a 2-stroke penalty under Rule 1.2b, a code of conduct rule that had existed since 2019 but had only started being actively enforced at major championships this year, in 2026. His 9 became an 11. His first round score went from a 76 to a 78. 37 minutes later, Niemann teed off for his second round. To his enormous credit, what he did next was one of the more remarkable things seen at a US Open in recent memory. He birdied 5 of his first 6 holes and shot a 5 under 65, the low round of the day. He made the cut, played the weekend, and eventually finished the tournament at 1 over par. He said afterward that he was not proud of his behavior, that he agreed players should not be throwing clubs, and that the penalty had, in a strange way, helped him reset mentally. But his coach Pete Cowen told a very different story outside. Cowen, who has worked with Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, Henrik Stenson, and Sergio Garcia, among others, went straight to the media and said the ruling was arbitrary. He said officials had picked Niemann out of a group of players who had all thrown clubs that same day. He confirmed there was no video of the incident, and he made the point that had been quietly building in conversations all around the course. It was one man's word against Joaquin's, there was no appeal available, and the USGA's own explanation to Niemann's team included the phrase, "Not all throws are equal." Not all throws are equal. Think about what that phrase means in practice. It means the penalty is discretionary. It means two players can do the same thing and receive different outcomes based on a judgment call made in the moment by one official. It means there is no clear line a player can look at before a round and know exactly where they stand. The rule exists. The enforcement is a feeling. Cowen put it even more plainly than that. He said it comes down to whether you like the player or not. 2 shots if you don't like him, nothing if he's a decent guy or hasn't thrown it as far. And while Niemann's team was making that argument on the driving range, something else was happening at the same tournament that made their case look stronger by the hour. Video surfaced of Jon Rahm kicking his driver multiple times down the fairway after a wayward tee shot. Hot microphones picked up a loud reaction after a missed putt. Rahm had already missed the cut by the time the footage spread, so there was no competitive consequence at stake. But the image of a USGA that hit one player with a historic 2-stroke conduct penalty based on a single eyewitness account, while footage of another player doing something similar circulated freely without any response from the governing body, that image landed in locker rooms and did not leave. And all of this, every single piece of it, was sitting fresh in the minds of the players who had to decide, immediately after that US Open ended, whether they were going to pack their bags and make the short trip to Connecticut for the Travelers Championship. Here is where the anger turns into action. Here are the names. Here is what they did, and what it means. The Travelers Championship is the final signature event of the 2026 PGA Tour season. These events carry the heaviest fields, the biggest prize funds, and the clearest expectation that the sport's biggest names will show up. When top players skip them, it matters. It sends a message whether they intend it to or not. And this week, the message being sent is hard to ignore. Rory McIlroy is not at the Travelers. Rory, the world number 2, was at Shinnecock Hills all week. He finished tied for 32nd and was seen and heard on the course, including a moment caught on camera where he vented at himself during the final round, telling himself to just go home. Days after that US Open ended, his name was not in the Travelers field. His stated reason, one he has given consistently all year, is that he played too much last year and wants to protect his schedule around the events that matter most to him. He has already skipped the RBC Heritage, the Cadillac Championship, and other events this season for the same reason. His next confirmed start is the Genesis Scottish Open, the week before the Open Championship. That is a consistent, publicly stated position. But Rory was also in that field at Shinnecock when the Niemann penalty dropped. He was in that field when the Clark controversy exploded on Saturday, and he was paying close enough attention to what was happening around him that he was caught on a live microphone telling himself to go home during his own final round. Within days of all of that, his name was gone from the Travelers. He is not the only one. Jordan Spieth, who has one of the most storied histories at TPC River Highlands, a former champion at this event, is absent this week. Collin Morikawa, who has been selective with his schedule all season, is not in the field. Viktor Hovland, coming off a difficult stretch of form and a disappointing US Open, chose to step away rather than continue directly into another event. Patrick Cantlay, whose relationship with tour governance and decisions made by those in power has been openly complicated for several years now, is also not making the trip to Connecticut. 5 of the biggest names in the sport, gone. 1 week after a US Open where the governing body of the game made a historic conduct ruling against one player based on no video evidence, while publicly declining to address footage of another player doing something the same rule was designed to prevent. None of them have said publicly that the USGA controversy drove their decision. Golf doesn't work that way. Players protect their access. They protect their relationships with governing bodies. They choose their battles carefully, and they choose their words even more carefully. But what they say privately, on the range, in the parking lot, in the locker room before and after rounds, is a different conversation entirely. And the people close to the tour know exactly what that conversation sounds like right now. The USGA has not issued a statement clarifying how the Code of Conduct rule will be applied going forward. They have not explained why footage of Rahm drew no response. They have not addressed the comparison between Niemann's penalty and Clark's repeated on-camera moments across multiple events this season. At the Arnold Palmer Invitational, at the Masters Par 3 contest, at Shinnecock Hills itself, that drew nothing more than an official standing nearby and nodding. They have said nothing. And that silence is the loudest thing in the sport right now. If you think the USGA need to come out and explain this publicly before the Open Championship, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters and pushes it to every golf fan who hasn't seen it yet. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next chapter of this breaks, because it will. Every player heading to Royal Portrush for the Open Championship is now playing under a rule that has been proven to work inconsistently, with no appeal, no video requirement, and no public framework for how decisions get made. The next time a club gets thrown at a major, and it will happen, because golf is a game that produces that kind of frustration at every level. Every player on that course will be wondering whether the official nearby likes them enough to let it go. That is not a position a governing body can stay in for long. And the 5 empty spots in the Travelers Field this week are the first sign that the players know it too.